Let's talk about documentary filmmaking. Aside from horror and sci-fi, documentary films have to be another personal favorite of mine as far as genres go. I love the process of doing research, diving into a subject that I'm passionate about, and creating a documentary film all by myself. Documentary filmmaking is a style of film that dates back to the earliest days of the medium. By definition, documentary films are a non-fiction motion picture intended to document some aspects of reality, primarily for the purpose of instruction or maintaining a historical record. There are generally 6 subgenres of documentaries. Poetic, which are abstract, loose documentaries that lean towards the more experimental side. They often focus more on creating a feeling rather than focusing on informing the viewer. Expository documentaries are the opposite of poetic and are what most people would commonly associate with a documentary film. These films focus on informing or persuading the viewer. Observational documentaries are when the filmmaker observes a situation, place, person, or any subject and does exactly what the name implies. They observe and let the audience find their own truth. I find these documentaries to be intimate and raw. Participatory documentaries are when the filmmaker themselves are part of the narrative. This could include the filmmaker just asking questions to the audience or interviewees in the film, or they can even go as far as influencing the narrative in some way. Reflexive documentaries are similar to participatory docs, but these usually focus on the filmmaker and the act of actually making the film, and not some other subject outside of it. And the final documentary style is the performative. These documentaries can most easily be described as the Michael Moore style, often using personal accounts to connect with larger issues like politics, environmental issues, or social issues. But now that we know the different styles of documentary filmmaking, it's important to note that these are not set in stone, and experimentation and doing what comes naturally to us as filmmakers is what can make our films feel unique and special. So in other words, feel free to interchange these ideas and create something all your own. Now that we know what a documentary film is and the different subgenres this style of film usually entails, let's talk about how we can plan, write, shoot, and edit a documentary film ourselves. The first word of advice I can give is to create a documentary about something that you are extremely passionate about. I've made 3 different documentary films in the past and shared them here on the channel. All of them were on subjects that I was very passionate about: animals, my favorite TV show, and the music scene here in the state where I live. Pick a subject of something that you're interested in and passionate about, and it will come through in the film. Writing the film will be much easier when you already know the subject matter inside and out and have real insight into what it is that you're talking about. As with any film, you should use the resources that you have available to you. So when we are planning our documentary film, we should take stock of the people, places, gear, and anything else that we have readily available to us for little to no money. One of the best aspects, in my opinion, about documentary filmmaking is that they can be the most affordable films for us to make. Most times you're not going to need tons of special effects, costumes, or much of a crew to tell a good story in the documentary style. So these types of films are great for someone who is just starting out in filmmaking to get their feet wet, as they can get started without having to worry about having a ton of money to get the project finished. Next, I would watch some of your favorite documentaries or some documentary films that are similar in subject matter to the film that you are thinking about making. Ask yourself some important questions while watching the film and take note of the things you like and don't like about it. What's the pacing like? Is there narration? Are there talking head interviews? If so, what is the lighting setup like? Are the interviewees facing the camera or sitting off to the side? Are there a lot of graphics and transitions? What kinds of moods does the film convey? What is the music like? What feeling does this film infuse within me? Once you know what story you'd like to tell, you've answered these questions above and you've figured out how they can relate to your film and what you would like to create, and you've taken stock of the resources available to you, now it's time to figure out what you'll need to create your film. The first thing to keep in mind with documentary films is that content will always trump quality. You can shoot a documentary with your phone and a nice external microphone setup and get great results. The main thing that matters is that you're telling a compelling story and you have clean audio. I would argue that using a camera and lighting setup that is compact and easy to move around would be ideal, especially if you are filming this documentary on the go and you're working mostly alone. If you need a list of affordable DSLR gear to get you started, I have a list available for you in the description below. After you have your subject and you know what gear you will be using, you need to start writing the script for your film and make a list of people that you'd like to interview for your film, if any. It's during this step that you will need to do tons of research on your subject, even if it's a topic that you are well versed in and passionate about. You need to make sure you have your facts straight, especially if you will be interviewing people who are close to the subject. This will help you prepare questions for your interviews. You can also do pre-interviews with your subject if you need to go over what will be covered in the film. This will help you and your subjects be comfortable when filming the actual interview. Be sure to create a shooting schedule by finding out when your interviewees will be available. Avoid asking yes and no questions, as these are not going to bring out the best responses from your interviewees. Being in front of the camera can be a nerve-wracking experience for most people. The main thing here with interviews is to make your subject feel as comfortable as possible. The more comfortable they are with you and being in front of the camera, the more likely they will talk and share more important information. As far as a look and recording audio for your interviews, make sure you have a lighting setup and an audio setup that is consistent throughout. Test your setup, angles, and look if you can beforehand, and make sure that you have clean audio, good lighting, and try to make sure that each individual interview has a cohesive look, feel, and sound. Aside from the interview shots, most documentary-style films feature B-roll in between the interviews. These are shots that you can use to help flesh out what your subject is speaking about and create visual interest in between shots of talking head interviews. These shots can include, but are not limited to, narrative shots that actually show events, reenactments, etc., exposition shots that can show nature, buildings, streets, pictures, anything that helps flesh out the who, what, when, and where that your narrator is speaking about. You can also use graphics like moving pictures, maps, animated presentations, and more to help tell your story. And don't forget to use transitions and wrap-up shots to help move on to new topics within the story and put a period at the end of each segment, chapter, or talking point. After you have all of the footage for your documentary shot and the interviews are all done, you can do any voiceover work if you need to, assemble and organize your footage, and start the editing process. The more organized that you are, the easier this process will be. Be sure to back up all of your files before getting started. You don't want to lose footage and have to call back a subject again to reshoot an interview. I would recommend creating individual sequences and edits for each interview on its own, and saving it as its own complete piece, making it easier to edit with the final timeline later on. Be sure while editing to tell a cohesive story from start to finish. Make sure you don't bounce around from talking point to talking point, using pieces from your interviews that are talking about the same talking point before moving on to the next topic. That way your audience can follow the story. Settle on a mood for your documentary like we spoke about earlier. You can help convey this through the use of music, and this will help figure out pacing as well. Also, don't be afraid using moments of silence to help express emotion. Once you have your new doc film edited, it's time to share your project with the world. If there is one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's that research and planning ahead are the most important aspects of documentary filmmaking. This is a genre I love, and I can't wait to start planning my next documentary project. Thank you so much for watching the video this far. If you have any additional tips or strategies for creating a documentary film, please share them with us in the comments below. This video has been brought to you by Epidemic Sound and our incredible channel members. Thanks for coming along on this filmmaking journey with me. I am Ryan, and I will see you on the next video. Bye-bye.